Well, thank you, everybody, for your patience as we get started. Our closed session took a little longer, but also had to get set up, make sure everything's working on the computer. So at this time, I'll call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Present.
Felder.
Here.
Whitman. Here. Stilgrave. Here. Vining. Here. Maney.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation and remain stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
In our deliberations and discussions this evening, may our efforts promote the good of the residents of this city and all who visit.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, please.
Is the approval of regular agenda.
I'm going to look to administration and Mr. Pestu, any adjustments?
If I may, Your Honor, I'd like to add last item under city council action is acceptance of Ralph Wilson Foundation grant for kayak launch at Hellenberg Park.
Others? Mr. Pastor, anything further? No. Thank you. Any other comments from council? If not, we need to approve the regular agenda with the requested amendment. Councilman Lamore.
Your Honor, I'd like to amend the regular agenda to include acceptance of the Ralph Wilson grant for Hellenberg Park.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave to approve the regular agenda with the amendment of including items stated by the city manager. Motion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Stilgrave.
Yes.
Vining.
Yes.
Germaine.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors. The amount should read $1,373,500.06, 1,373,500.06.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda from council? Seeing none, are there any items on the consent agenda that those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Items on the consent agenda. And for those, the consent agenda is items that could get passed all collectively in one vote. If they appear on the presentation communications and public hearings, they'll be brought forward during comments and opportunities. If it's on council action, each of those items will be taken on individually. So they will require presentation or comments and then vote by the council on each individual item. So that's the difference between kind of the consent agenda, all comes together, and then council action. And they're usually separated by some of the, I'll just say manner in which they require the conversation and a vote because it may require certain votes. So with that, any comments, any items on the consent agenda, those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, a motion would be in order. Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Whitman. Stilgrave. Yes. Vining.
Yes.
Germaine.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. Item 4017, LOCC salary for local elected officials.
Thank you. Mr. Pestu, I think we have some information regarding this.
Thank you, Your Honor. Last week, the Local Officers Compensation Commission met last Monday. They meet in odd years before candidate filing deadlines to determine what the salaries for elected officials, in this case, obviously, mayor, city council members, and clerk treasurer. They have the, as part of the communication, they submitted a determination as to what those would be for the mayor as well as council, as well as the clerk treasurer. The recommendation is for the mayor's compensation to be $17,000, which would take effect January 1st, 2024, $8,500 for per year for council members, again, effective January 1, 2024. The annual increase for the clerk treasurers in line with what non-union department heads were 5%, 3%, would be $85,835 effective January 1, 2024, and $88,410 effective January 1, 2025. Through the process, Dr. Everly provided comparables to the board for their consideration, and certainly they took into account the duties, responsibilities, and commitment associated with the elected officials here in the city. This is treated as a communication item. The determination of this local officers compensation commission could only be changed if there was any motion to reject it. And so at this point, it's presented as a communication item and would automatically take effect in accordance with our city code as well as the state statute.
Thank you, Mr. Pastou. So it's a communication. I'll just take a second. If there's no comments, so we'll be moving on to the next item. I see no comments. I know we're going to move to the next item, but just for clarity for those that are listening and those that are here today, understand I want to first thank the Local Officers Compensation Commission for their diligence and work. I thank the Dr. Everly and Mr. Pastou for their kind of bringing the group together and talk about that. The last thing I want to say is the Compensation Commission makes their decisions not based on who's sitting in office today. They make it based on the position and how the comparables may be for the position, not the people that sit in the chairs, because we don't know who's going to be here next. So it's purposely done at this time frame by the ordinance, that it's done in a time fashion prior to the upcoming year for the election. That's why it's always every 2 years, and why it's always months ahead before there's knowing who may be even running for office. So I bring that as clarity for those that may or may not know that. So with that, clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4009, retaining wall along Kentucky Street.
Thank you, Mr. Pastou.
Excuse me. Well, as you know, back in February, council directed myself and city attorney Patrick Lewis to send a letter to Norfolk Southern expressing our concerns regarding the retaining wall on Kentucky. Obviously, a month passed with no response, and lo and behold, we did get a response from them, which read, we are recently made aware of the conditions of our retaining wall along Kentucky Street. We are currently working on a solution for the wall at this time to give us the best longevity without impacting the functionality of the street. We do not have a timeline yet for the repair work, when the repair work will begin, but is being monitored as our maintenance forces go by as they perform their scheduled inspections. So you did get a response. There's no timeline as to where it was, but I thought it was important enough to share that they did acknowledge the condition of the retaining wall on Kentucky Avenue.
So that's a communication for council. Any questions from council for Mr. Pastou? I know we all received a copy of that. The clerk has it within the record as well. Okay, seeing no comment, next item, please.
The next item is item 3926, CDBG Annual Action Plan 2023 through 2024, public hearing.
Before I call the public hearing, Mr. Pastou, or is there items you wish to at least have
I'd have
conversation?
Mr. Cochran introduce this item.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Mark Cochran, Economic and Community Development Director. This evening, tonight's the second public hearing for this year's annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program. just for some background information, we have a 5-year plan that we do for the CDBG program, and then every year we have to tell HUD how we're going to spend our funds and how we're going to direct our funds given the priorities that they give us. And so this evening, I've asked Briarty to join us. Caitlin is the one who's responsible, does a tremendous job in administering our CDBG program. She's going to show you 2 slides tonight that pretty much summarizes everything. But in tonight's agenda packet, you'll see there was actually a 38-page report that the city was required to prepare and submit. And that's what the public hearing is here for tonight. And so Caitlin does a tremendous job every year putting together that plan, working with community stakeholders and preparing that information for city council's approval. So without objection, I'd like to introduce Caitlin. Caitlin is Planner 1 Grants Coordinator. Her role recently changed, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later on this evening. But in addition to focusing on community development block grants, she now helps coordinate all of the city's grants as well and is doing a tremendous job. So, Caitlin?
Thank you. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. As Mark stated, Caitlin McBriarty, Economic and Community Development Department. So the city has completed its 23-24 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. The required public hearings have been held. The second one will be held tonight, and the required public comment period has ended. So for the plan, the city focuses on 2 main objectives: benefiting low and moderate income persons and eliminating slum blight areas. The 23-24 allocation for the city of Monroe is $444,645. There's an estimated carryover of $421,000, which will stay in its current programming that it was programmed for the 22-23 year. And $155,753 in funds that were reallocated from blight removal and code enforcement into demolition of vacant and abandoned structures. This is the proposed 23-24 budget. The lighter colored items at the bottom is what was carried over from the current program year into next year. So we have blight and code enforcement, demolition of vacant and abandoned structures, public facilities, which will include streets, alleys, parks, and buildings, fixed program, which is our home rehabilitation program, the administration of the fixed program, which we work with Monroe County Opportunity Program on, foreclosure and homelessness prevention, which we work with Legal Services of South Central Michigan, summer youth program at the ALCC, and then for planning and administration. The approval of the action plan is on the agenda later this evening, and if approved, will be submitted to HUD this week for approval, with funds expected to be available around July 1st. And thank you for your time this evening. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Caitlin. I know that we have a public hearing shortly that's also later on the agenda. It's a council action item as well. I'll just see if there's, I'm just thinking questions for Caitlin at this point. Councilwoman Bonnie?
Yes, I wanted to ask about, we talked earlier in the year about the down payment assistance program. I know you had that ghosted out. And we were waiting for the neighborhood specialist to be hired. So I just personally think we still need to put more funding into that line item and then that's a lot in there for demolition of vacant and abandoned structures. Is there a way I can find out, do we plan to use that for specific structures? Do you know already which? You don't know yet?
No, so related to the down payment assistance program, the 4 that are at the bottom are not being eliminated. That's being carried over from last year. So the $10,000 in the down payment assistance program, we can only use a certain percentage of our allocation for a program such as that. And now that Matt Vanasacker is on board, I actually mentioned to Caitlin today, we'll start putting together the parameters and the structure for a program to start accepting applications for that program. And then hopefully beef it up once we have the program going and implemented. Related to the demolition of vacant and abandoned structures, that's also, so we don't have anything targeted, but as properties come up that need demolished, either we get those through the county treasurer's office, through tax foreclosure, or the dangerous building hearings in the Construction Board of Appeals. Those funds will be available to assist with that program. There's very targeted areas that we can use those funds for in the city, and they have to be in low to moderate income census tracts. Sometimes it's a little difficult with the Construction Board of Appeals and the demolition program because there are a lot of requirements we have to do, from environmental surveys to archaeological assessments and working through this historic preservation office now and having an archaeologist review the site. So it takes a little more time. So they would be targeted demolitions for properties that the city acquires, but no list or anything of that sort, just to help offset the costs of the demolitions that come out of the general fund or the building fund.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, didn't have my mic on. For a public hearing, unless there's some further. All right, I think, and then we can, obviously, there's on the council action item as well, and there may be some additional from council at that point, if there's any comments from the public. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing regarding the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan 2022-2023 to take comments here this evening. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding what is called the CDBG Annual Action Plan? Seeing none. Close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4024, public hearing to receive and review comments on the property located at 208 East 7th Street.
Thank you. And as before we get to that item with the public hearing, if there's comments that those wish to be made, Mr. Pastu, is there information, or Mr. Attorney Buds?
Your Honor, I would just recommend that the public hearing be opened, and with an indication that Director Tolstead from the Department of Public Safety will provide background information, but for purposes of the record, it'd be my recommendation that he present that as part of the public hearing.
Okay. With that, at this time, I'll open the public hearing regarding the nuisance drug property, 2008 East 7th Street discussion. Mr. Buds then, and I see Director Tolstead is here.
Your Honor, I think it would be appropriate for Director Tolstead to give background regarding the law enforcement activity that has occurred at the property at 208 East 7th Street.
Hello, Mayor, City Council members, Clerk Lavoie, Chad Tolstead, Director of Public Safety for the City of Monroe. Just to give a little background, as the city attorney indicated, regarding this residence specifically. I believe you have this in the packets, what I'm kind of reading off of and taking notes from, you have in front of you as well. So over the last 7 years, the City of Monroe Police and the Monroe Area Narcotics and Investigative Services, otherwise known as MANTIS, have received numerous complaints regarding this residence specifically. Citizens that reside near this residence have called to complain about suspected drug activity and high levels of foot traffic in and out of this residence dozens and dozens of times. So I'll give you a few details that are overarching, nothing too specific concerning this. Some of these are still being adjudicated, and some of them just aren't prudent for tonight. Between the dates of November 2016 and May 17th, in a 7-month period, the Monroe Police, City of Monroe Fire responded to 6 different times of an overdose complaints where Narcan had to be used at this residence. So it either had to be used and possessed at this residence there for someone to have to be treated for an overdose using Narcan. In March 22nd, 2017, then the City of Monroe Vice Unit conducted a search warrant at 208 7th, where the narcotics, paraphernalia, and stolen property were located at this residence. And since 2021, the Monroe Police Department has been dispatched to 208 East 7th 22 times, 14 of those alone in 2022, for various complaints ranging from drug search warrants, assaults, suspicious activity, larcenies, domestic violence calls, and arrest warrants. The last 2 I'll outline is what really brings us here tonight. In December 22nd of 2022, Mantis conducted a search warrant at 208 East 7th following an investigation where narcotics were being purchased from individuals inside the residence. As a result of that raid, narcotics and paraphernalia were recovered from inside. Less than 3 months later, at the behesting of neighbors that said the drug activity has since picked up, less than 3 months later, Mantis conducted a second search warrant of that residence after the residence occupants were found to be dealing cocaine out of the residence. Again, on that search warrant, narcotics and paraphernalia were recovered. As a result, the owner of that residence has pled guilty to charges, with one of them being maintaining a drug house. Also, in closing, it's worth noting that this residence is within 1,000 feet of a school zone, and that's significant, as in that's a 2-year felony to be able to deal and to have this type of narcotic activity that close to a school zone. Also want to thank the hard work of the narcotics detectives of the Mantis unit and express my gratitude for the citizens' patience that showed the patience they showed law enforcement as we put this investigation together.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing and an opportunity, obviously, to take comments, but I'll see if council has questions, maybe after the public comments, if they're before Director Tolstead or administration or otherwise. Thank you. So we've opened the public hearing. Are there any comments from those present here this evening regarding this public hearing? Yes, sir. Please come forward. And what we ask is, of course, if there's public comment, just state your name and jurisdiction of residence. It's for the record, so we know later on it's a document, so we know who's spoken. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Sexton Ward. I'm the son of the owner of the house. I was currently incarcerated for 7 years. I'm 22 years old. I just came home on April 11th. There's a difference between a drug dealer and a drug addict. I know my mom's not the best person. She just has a bad drug problem. She's been struggling with it her whole life. Like, I was supposed to get out and be released to this house. Right now, I'm staying in a homeless shelter right now because I don't have nowhere to go. The house is empty. We were in the midst of changing the deed over to my name. There is currently 2 years of property tax that weren't paid. But my grandmother's sister, she's here right now to support me. We worked out an arrangement to pay the property taxes off. I'll do anything I can. Just please let me know my options I have for this house. If we can figure something out with the house, the property. We can change the deed over from my mother's name into my name. We can sell the house. I was just made aware about this like a week ago. And the house, those people, my mother's currently incarcerated. She's doing 3 years. No one's at the house. No one will be there. There'll be no traffic. I'm just trying to get my life back on track and be a member of society. That's all. I want to contribute. I changed my life around. That's it, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Ward. I may have a comment or a question later once we hear from all the public comments, maybe for the city attorney. Thank you.
Okay.
Other comments from those present here this evening regarding this public hearing? Yes, sir. Please step forward. Name and jurisdiction of residence, please.
My name is Manny Robertson. I'm a friend of Mr. Ward's. How you guys doing, Mr. Council members? I don't have no knowledge of the past of that location of the house, but I do have knowledge of the future. And what my friend told me, he told me he is trying to fix it up to standards of living in, to where he can sell it. He just been released home to a lot of mess within this property, so he don't have knowledge of anything. Me as myself, I don't have no knowledge. But as what I learned from my friend, what he told me, he planned on fixing up the house and cleaning it and just making it a better environment for the community, for the neighbors, and for himself, so he can have a place to live. And just for the future, it's I could personally say there wouldn't be like no more drug activity or anything of that nature. It was the previous owners, and they are trying to sign it over to my friend's name, and we just he just wanted a place to come home to after doing a long time away from everything, and we just want to come and speak and give our part of what we have to say. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening on this public hearing? Other comments? Yes, please step forward. Name and address and jurisdiction, please.
Hi, my name is Linda Michaels, and I'm Jennifer Ward's aunt. Sexton is my nephew. I know Jennifer's had problems all her life with addiction, and I would really like everybody to consider giving him a second chance. He needs to have this home to live in. He's living in a shelter or a halfway house. I know he would try to take care of it. He has already talked about trying to bring up the code on some of the things that need to be redone. He wants to just start over and try to make everything right. I know the neighbors have complained, and I've heard it myself. And I'm kind of glad that everything came to a point because I know it's been going on for years. But I think everyone should really consider this young man's life. He's going to try hard. He was very young when he was sent to prison. He was probably 15. Like you said, he's been in there 7 years. 7 years. And I would love to see him get a chance to try to make something of his life. And this house would do it for him because it's paid off. And I really think he would put everything into it to get it up to where the neighbors would all be okay with it. He just needs a chance. And Jennifer, the mother, she is already facing 3 years in prison. And that won't be determined rightly until June 1st, I think. But just hopefully you will consider him, give him a chance. He was very young, and he had a hard life. He was brought up with drugs all his life. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments for the public hearing from those present? Any further comments for the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. This item does come up for further discussion under council action. I think I explained that before. I'm looking, Mr. Buzz, is there anything further that you have at this time? Or will it be later during the council action?
I have nothing further. I can describe options that city council has and considerations that can be given when the item comes up for council action as the next agenda item.
That's what I was looking for. So the public hearing is closed. We'll move forward, and as we get to the council action, then we'll hear from the city attorney regarding what those considerations for resolution will be. I don't think there's further. Clerk?
So the next item is under council action. It's item 4025, resolution drug nuisance property 208 East 7th Street.
Thank you. Mr. Buds, if you're, unless it's Mr. Pastu, but Mr. Buds, I know that we just came from through the public hearing, heard comments. So looking at this resolution for this evening and the options, if you would, please.
Yes, Your Honor. So this is all action that's being taken or proposed under City Code Section 296, Sections 3 to 7, which deals with drug nuisance properties in the city of Monroe. And what the ordinance states is that the city is determined that whenever the use, sale, furnishing, giving, or possession of controlled substances or drug paraphernalia occurs on any property, that the result is increased criminal activity in the neighborhood surrounding the property and increased pedestrian and vehicular traffic in the neighborhood, disrupting the peace and the quiet of residents living in the neighborhood and surrounding the property, which would create a public nuisance. City Council has the power, whenever any of those circumstances occur, to declare the property a public nuisance by resolution, and prior to such a declaration, notice shall be given to the owner and a public hearing shall be held and a recommendation shall be submitted from the appropriate department. Notice to the property owner of the public hearing should occur either by personal service or by certified or registered mail. I will indicate that in the packet that you have with the draft resolution, there was an indication that the current property owner, Ms. Ward, was served personally with a copy of the notice of the proceedings here this evening, and that a copy was sent via certified mail and first-class mail, and a copy of the notice posted at the property as well. This all also follows a situation where there was prior notice given to the property owner that the presumption of a public nuisance under Section 296-6 would be, I'll call it, in play in the event that the activities continued at the property. In your packet, you have a letter that came from my office dated January 18th, 2023, indicating that if similar activity occurred on the property similar to what occurred on the December 2nd, 2022 search warrant execution, that council may order the structure padlocked or boarded for up to 1 year, and that as the owner of record, that she may be liable for the full cost of personnel used to padlock or board up the property, as well as the expenses related to officers responding to the drug-related activity on the premises. All of that being under City Code Section 296-5. So I would say that from my perspective, having received that notice, which you have the proof of delivery of that prior January notice to the property owner, and then the activity continuing, that the city has the right to declare that there's a persuasive presumption that a public nuisance occurred at the property, even independent of all of the other evidence that's been presented. I will say, from my perspective, certainly I understand a discussion of desires for the future, but I will also say I think that the history of the property has been made clear by the evidence that was presented by Director Tolstead and the information that's proceeding in the court system as well. And so it's up to City Council to take into account all of that information, make a determination as far as whether there's a belief that a public nuisance has occurred, and whether the conditions that are described in the ordinance, and again, those are use, sale, furnishing, giving, or possession of controlled substances or drug paraphernalia on any property resulting in increased criminal activity, that City Council may then determine a public nuisance exists and may authorize the Department of Public Services to prohibit the occupancy of the property by padlocking or boarding up the property for a period of up to 1 year from the date that council would adopt the resolution, and determine that all of those costs that I described be assessed against the property.
Thank you. I'll see if council has any questions for Mr. Buds. Councilman Limore?
This is a question for Mr. Buds. I'm assuming that this action has already taken place where the property has been locked up, or has it not been taking place yet?
No, that has not occurred. That's up for council to decide what they feel is an appropriate action based on the factors that were described from the ordinance.
What kind of timeline would we expect if we do approve of this resolution?
So this is a matter that is deemed final by a city council determination. However, any owner of record does have the right to appeal that decision to circuit court. And so I would say that's the only question of timing, is whether there would be any appeal and whether there would be any stay that would be granted by any court. However, this would be deemed a final decision by the city council to move forward with that.
So let me ask this question real quickly. Is it safe to say that there's nothing preventing somebody from cohabiting in the property currently, or?
That would be correct. So there's,
Thank
as
you.
far as I know, there's been no action taken, certainly as I know, by city council or by anyone else to say that there's any prohibition against occupation of that property as we sit here this evening.
Thank you.
So is Paula, she's first.
Whitman, you have a question or comment?
Yes, is it possible for us to set up stipulation if he were to stay on the property? Because I'm sure he means everything that he's saying in this moment. But if he lacks the support and the people that will, help him, he's not gonna make it anyway.
So, Your Honor, if I may talk about one other part of the ordinance.
Yes, please.
So in the ordinance, it says that if city council determines that the property, which is the subject of a public hearing, is according to current court documents, the subject of an eviction proceeding, the city council can take that matter under advisement, withhold the declaration of the property as a public nuisance until such time as evidence is submitted to the clerk treasurer that eviction proceedings have been completed, terminated, or otherwise resolved. Now, I'm going to say that's not the exact circumstances that we have here, but for those that have been on council for some time, we did have this situation with a different property in the past where the property owner was related to an occupant. They ended up having a scenario where they came to an agreement that I'll say the person that was involved in the activity was no longer at the property. So certainly council has the discretion in order to proceed forward, to delay, or to take action this evening. I'll say you have fairly wide latitude in determining what your course of action is.
Councilwoman Germaini?
So who boarded up the windows? Because I went by the house a couple times and the windows are boarded up. Is there people that can get in and out of there, or did they board up the windows?
Ma'am, hold on. The conversation's with the administration here, so they can tell us what the city or whoever did or what we know, and then if we need more questions, we will. Thank you. Mr. Buds.
May, I think Director Tolstead may be able to speak more to that. Certainly, it wasn't any action based on application of this drug nuisance section, but it may have had something to do with the interaction at the property.
Correct. Honorable Mayor, City Council members. The last raid was the SWAT team was called out to make entry in there. They couldn't get through the front door, or had determined from a previous raid they couldn't get through the front door. So they ultimately went through, used the front window, knocked out the front window, made entry through there. Then after that, we called out DPS to board up the window for.
So the house has heat and electric, and someone could live in the house if we chose to extend this, or is everything turned off?
I can't speak to that issue based on what we know. However, I will say it's believed that it was being occupied prior to that most recent raid. I can't speak to whether utilities remain on, but I will say it certainly was occupied up until that point in time, and that would lead me at least to presume utilities still being on at this time.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from council? Councilwoman Viney, please.
So I do recall us being here a couple times before. I can't quite remember all the resolution that happened, but I do remember we gave second chances on this, or in this case, a lot more than two chances. But we did work with the property owners. And, listening to the young man, I don't know what you did to, get 7 years or what happened, but, he's still young. And I think, I don't know what he did when he was in prison. You could have took schooling or lots of other things. I don't know. So I won't say that you wouldn't be able to do it. Personally, I guess I'd like to see if you be able to stand up, because one thing you said that is true. Sometimes drug abuse and drug dealing, sometimes it goes hand in hand. Especially, I don't know the drug, but I see it a lot with heroin. So we do have a drug problem here in this community, and it has affected the children of the addicts, and so if this council so chooses, I know I would be willing to definitely less than 2 years of boarding it up, giving you some time to show what you're going to do. You talked about transferring the deed over and other things. So I just wanted to state that I'd be willing to consider not boarding the house up for 2 years, but maybe for some time frame, and maybe that time could help the young man figure out his plan. I don't know you, so I don't know what you're working on, but figure out his plan in the meantime. But I do understand the parents being addicted. It trickles down, and it does affect the children. But to have a home that's paid for, free and clear, I mean, that's a big head start for someone to be able to overcome these type of issues. And I could only hope that the young man would be able to do that, and so we'll see here how it's going to work out. I just wanted to make those statements, Your Honor.
Okay, before I take the next question, Mr. Buds, just clarify for me. I heard you say up to 1 year, not
Correct.
2 years. It's
I was
up
gonna
to
say
1
that.
year
Up
is
to
the
1 year.
maximum time frame, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Other questions or Councilman Lamore?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Councilperson Vining was saying. And Kelly, I certainly agree with you that I do have empathy towards this person here. And I guess my issue with it is that our law enforcement has gone to great lengths to protect the city and to basically also protect that neighborhood from the issues that were reoccurring and reoccurring and reoccurring. And I like the fact that we have up to a year, which means we don't have to follow through with the full year. But I do think that it is a necessity, and I don't think we'd be doing anybody a favor if we don't follow through with the drug nuisance resolution, including this young man here, because this is a known property where the drug interaction has occurred, and I have a feeling that it's going to be a reoccurring thing if we just open it right back up. And I think that would destroy everything that our law enforcement has already done, and I'd hate to see that happen. So from that aspect, that I don't support allowing this to just be free and clear and not boarded up, but definitely should reconsider and think about it for the future, because I do value this young man's future, and I do want to see him become a good member of our society, and I think he will be, but I don't think the proper way of doing it is to just put him right back into this home.
Other council comments, questions? Council Builder?
Yes, Your Honor. I just want to follow up with Director Tolstead on some dates. The letter that the city attorney sent was on the 19th of January of this year?
It was January 18th.
January 18th, okay. And then the search warrant was executed March 16th. And subsequently, the property owner was arrested at that time for the activities that were taking place in the house.
That is accurate, yes.
And there have been no incidents from March 16th to this point. The property is now vacant. There's no activity currently taking place in the home.
From my understanding, there has been some activity at the residence, nothing that would rise to some of the things we had mentioned previously. But there, from my understanding, there has been activity at the house, and there is somebody residing in there.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a couple, then I'll come back to Councilman King. So just for my clarity as well, is there's a lot of discussion on various aspects of this, and I look at, what's before us today regarding a resolution regarding enforcing the city public nuisance ordinance, and a resolution which can be determined by time if that's what council wishes to do so, up to 1 year. So that's what's the items that's before us today. But I heard a couple things, so I don't know if that Director Tolstead or Mr. Buzz, if you have that. So the current owner of the property is it the person which is currently incarcerated?
Yes, that's correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
Jennifer Ward.
Okay, thank you. And that case is pending?
Yes, it's my understanding, Your Honor, that sentencing is scheduled for June 1st of this year.
So June 1st is sentencing date, but we don't know what that is, or maybe guidelines, or maybe recommendations. But of course, we know as that goes through the court process, there's the judge will make that final determination of what that may be. So I ask these questions because I think about what's the possibilities, and I'm not sure the transfer deed or how that occurs or would occur, and how it could do when somebody's incarcerated. I don't know. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. I think that my first thought is we have to have assurances as a council to know that there won't be other activity. There won't be other disruption to the neighborhood or those in which reside in the neighborhood. And just as we heard here today from some that want to move forward in an action of what's said, I also think about the residents over the past, whatever the time frame was of what Director Tolstead said, and we have to take that into consideration as well. And we can say that we're going to move forward and have a particular item, but there's still things pending that I don't know what the outcome is. And if we start on a path that there's not a resolution of action of a period of time, we could be right back where we started. And I think we've spent as the city, the community, the residents, and those impacted, even those that spoke here today, that you have to have I'll say a starting point that serves all and satisfies all the best we can, but also knowing that if the time frame is known, what can be done in that sense. To me, there's opportunities then for transition of property. I think there's time frame for assuring the residents and the neighbors that are near the residents that, yes, it will be different in the future, but I don't think that's done by a change of one day to the next. It's a time frame to show that we have an ordinance that is important to get to this point. We don't have many of these in this sense. We've had them in the past, but to make it's a message for all that, we're considering for all, and I'm not negating the opportunities of the future, because I think that's important as well. But I think we have to take a position to start with, my view, of some period of time, because there's things that are pending that we don't know the answer to. And if it goes in a fashion that doesn't involve incarceration of a period of time, doesn't involve a deed transfer, then we're just waiting for something more to happen yet again. So I think the time frame of some resolution that has a time frame, and then we know it can't be more up to 1 year, I think I'm not a title person, I'm not an attorney, I can't tell you the timeframes and all that, what that takes to do. But if the message is sent that there is a possibility for that to occur, then it puts things in place that, I'll just say, the initiative has to be taken to make those things occur, to make the council comfortable, know that when it is a home of residence, again, that it's fashioning and that benefits not only those that are there, but the neighborhood as well. So that's my position. I think we should have a resolution of some period of time. I'm open to that discussion. I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Councilwoman Viney was, and I'll come back because you were when I was going to speak. Councilwoman?
I had a couple things for Chief Tolstead. When you say that there's been activity, do you mean drug activity or just movement in the house?
Just from my understanding, Councilwoman, that is just activity. I haven't heard anything specific regarding drug activity. I just heard it's still occupied.
Okay. And Your Honor, based on what you're saying now, I agree with a lot of it. If we know that the court date is June 1st, I believe the attorney said we could table this or postpone this to a later date. Was that one of our options?
You always have the option, anything before you, to say you're not going to consider it tonight. The other, while we're talking about options, you could always go with a period of time for a short boarding up that would get you beyond that date to know what happened at that sentencing, and then, could always schedule a further hearing or say that it's going to be for some shorter period of time, and then that you would want the matter back before council. I'll say, again, you have fairly wide latitude to either say no action, delayed action, or action for some short or longer period of time up until 1 year that the property could be boarded.
I mean, I was just thinking, Your Honor, if we waited and see how the case was adjudicated, but then again, it could just be postponed at the court. We don't really know. So, yeah, I was just curious about that.
It's a good thought. I think sometimes if you wait, you're just waiting for what you don't know. And if you don't know, then you're waiting for what does or doesn't happen on the road. I think, there's a reason for the ordinance, and it rarely comes to us, but the idea is to take some form of action. I'm open to a period of time. I wouldn't want to do it, quite honestly, in my opinion, I wouldn't want to do it after, to wait to see what happens, because then it just delays things, and they see it's really not going to happen. I don't have to transfer it. It's not going to happen, so I can just wait till I get out. It doesn't have to happen. I think it's a message that we, for the owner, those that I think will utilize the house differently in the future, and also the residents, that there's a start point, and that's what I'm looking to do. I'll go back down the line here, Councilwoman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Another question for our attorney. Does this resolution prevent transfer of deed or sale of home?
It does not. I will say the issue of whether the property, though, is boarded up, and we had this, for those of you that might recall, with a similar scenario with the property over on East 2nd Street at one point in time, where there was a lot of discussion of who was going to be the property owner. From my perspective, the issues are, what are the facts that relate to what has occurred at that property? Council can make the decision. I'll say, I haven't heard anything that there have been any transfers that have occurred as we sit here today, and I did check. I didn't see anything with registered deeds when I checked earlier today that had been recorded relative to this property, at least in what was available in the online records. And so I see this as running with the property, not necessarily a change of ownership. So you could have a change of ownership, but I don't believe that would change the fact that council has the authority to take action based on what has occurred at the property itself.
Thank you.
Councilman Felder.
Given that the offending party is now no longer in the picture in this, I think that the ownership of the property is kind of what Councilman Lamore is getting at, kind of matters in this case. Where if the issues that were leading to the resolution that is before us now was created by an incident, and that incident is more or less dealt with. I mean, it's in the judicial process now. We have no say-so over that whatsoever. Then there is the potential for us to proceed in some way without, again, potentially seeing any issues. Now, I think that in talking about time frame, I think is a very responsible thing to do. I think that talking about contingency is probably a very prudent thing to do. So I'm looking to my colleagues to prepare a motion, but I think that this case does have some extenuating circumstance attached to it.
So I guess I'll make a comment, and Director has a comment, I guess, to follow up. So while the person may be incarcerated, they're still a person of ownership. And whether you're incarcerated or not, you have the ability to permit or allow anybody to be able to be there. You don't have to be present. Unless I'm saying something wrong, I'll look to our city attorney. So I think that's why I believe there should be an action of time. I think we should be setting a time frame. And if council thinks a year is too much, I may be agreeable to something less, but I want to hear what Director Toll said, and then I'll give my thoughts on time frame.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I just want to add out to Council Felder's point was that, yes, while Jennifer, the owner, is facing jail time, is currently in jail, that she is not the sole resident of this residence that's been this period of time. There's been other people that have lived in this house during the same period of time, which I have no reason to believe they wouldn't continue to live in this house during that same period of time. So to be fair, so council has full information, I would just wanted to add that in, and I appreciate it.
That's where I'm going. If it's in, the owner's not going to be present, potentially. I can't say that that's not going to happen. It could. But then how do you manage, and how do we as a city and a police department and the council then manage a property that has no direct oversight if there's extended incarceration? So I look at the time frame on this, and I do think of those that are here, and I know that the circumstances there. Well, those may be additional circumstances. We're really here for the resolution about what happens to the property at this time and for how long. I'm not going to be comfortable with just saying, let's see what happens. I'm not going to be comfortable in saying, we'll wait till the deed transfer and let others live there, because the owner still has oversight, whether they're present or not. And I think it needs to be a point also with the residents that for this time frame that I guess experience the circumstances that were going on. So I'll just start here. And while my position's been with it in the past that I think that should be a year, I think there's a time frame. But I also think of the time of the year where we are, and I think how then that may impact other opportunities that may present themselves of seasonal. I'll just say, I will start and I'll see where council comes and if there's a motion by any council members where we go forward of any sense for a vote. But I would not, my position is it should be a minimum of 6 months. I think where we are in the time of the year and where we'll be when that concludes, I think there's opportunities to put a lot of things in place. Hopefully it'll be with what Mr. Ward had said about trying to gain ownership, that then we know who we're dealing with and here is present to do that. I understand that does cause some a conflict of residents in the time frame. I understand it might cause some conflict otherwise, but then we also have to be where we, if there's not oversight and supervision because the person's not there, then we should be willing to accept whatever's going to happen. And I'm not. So I'm not saying I doubt where it's going to go. I just think this gives us a time frame for everybody to take a position of how do we make this better for the future? And that's my position, but I'll take other comments.
I have
Councilwoman Germaini?
questions and comments. I do think we need to act on this with maybe a lower time frame. I believe in giving second chances, and I hope you make it. I hope the best for you. What happens to the residents that are in there currently if we choose to board this up for a time period? Do they get evicted? How do we control that while he's trying to get things together?
Yeah, so this is an action that's taken against the property. That is, the city has the right to declare that it was a nuisance and to have it boarded up. There's always the right of the property owner to appeal that determination. It's not an eviction in its traditional sense. I will say, for purposes of information, that Ms. Ward, Jennifer Ward, is listed as the owner of record, and it has a principal residence exemption that she's the owner and it's her homestead. So I'm not aware of there being any, landlord-tenant type relationships. I think it was likely, I'm saying my presumption is permissive use on her part. If her right to occupy is terminated, I would say any of those would be terminated along with her. This is an action taken against the property so that it cannot be continued in the use that it has over the last several months.
Okay. Councilman Moore, and then
Thank
I'll
you,
go back around.
One more for our attorney. Is it a possibility to put in a clause onto our already spelled out resolution, such as you state a time frame, 6 months, and if another offense occurs, we will go with the full year, or do we have to start back to go again?
I think I'll give you my perspective on that. If it's padlocked and should not be occupied, that's going to be one issue, and I'll say that's a matter for public safety to continue to enforce that no one should be at that property. Any additional activity that would occur at that property would give rise to yet another incident, and I think council could again schedule another public hearing to say, okay, we gave X amount of months. Somehow, even though it was boarded up for that period of time, that something still happened. Now we're going to say, and I think you would be within your rights at that point in time to say a year from that date, because that would be another instance of drug activity at that property.
So we don't have to spell that out, is what I'm basically saying.
I don't believe you would in the circumstances that you described. I think it's knowing the facts that you have seen and heard and had presented tonight. What's your view on what the action should be today? If something new comes about, there's always the right to have future hearing about that matter.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because I think that otherwise you're just stacking something that doesn't necessarily need to be there, and then it doesn't give the space at the opposite end for a light, so to speak, and let the actions that may or may not occur drive the time frame of what is set by the council. I'm going to go down to Councilwoman Whitman, and then we'll come back.
Yes, I think that we should try to help them. I believe in second chances, and I've seen it happen so many times. I see miracles all the time. But you're going to need guidance. You're going to need support. I don't know if you belong to a church or if you go to a 12-step program, wherever. You need people that understand what you're trying to do and will support you in that. Because you know that someday your mother's coming home, and when she does, nothing's going to change. I know your mother. I've known her for a long time. So, and I'm not saying anything bad about her. It's the power of addiction. But if you want to live in that house, my suggestion would be you fix it up and you sell it. And you move somewhere else and restart your life. And, but you need a plan. If we vote, you know, to give you a second chance, then you need a plan.
Okay. Other council comments? Councilwoman Stelgrave?
I'm all for the, let's look at the 6 months. That would give him opportunity, time to, do whatever he needs to do, but with the understanding that it is boarded for 6 months and then until things change.
Councilwoman Viney, last comments?
Your Honor, clearly we all have empathy for the young man, and it's a separate, our empathy is a separate issue from the resolution. But I think, like you said, Ms. Stelgrave, it does give him some time as well, but I would agree with the 6 months as well, because clearly this has been going on for a lot of years, and I want to be clear that we appreciate our public safety officers, and as well as the neighbors who were bold enough to speak up about the nuisance in their neighborhood. Nobody wants to have to deal with the type of things that comes with maintaining a drug house. So I think 6 months is good, because by then the court case should be gone through. We can see where the owner is at that point, what's going on with the owner, and then hopefully her son can have made some arrangements so as not to be homeless, and then maybe develop the property where the neighbors will be satisfied as well. So,
Thank you. Any final comments before we look at a motion? I have one comment I'll make. Councilwoman Jamie, or do you have?
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, before that, I just think, this is good discussion. I think it's appropriate for this council to have these. I think everybody here believes in second chances. And how you get there is really the pathway in which it is, and I think it requires every participation from everybody. The reason I'm looking at why I was through the 6 month, I think about the season, I think about the time, I think about this year. 6 months from now, there's still going to be possibilities, but it won't have to be through the winter season either. And I think that we have to take all the items into consideration, and second chances are great opportunities, and I don't think it's going to be wasted in this sense. But we have an obligation to make sure we do what's in front of us, and I'll just wait then and hear if there's a motion. Councilwoman Germaini, did you have a motion?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I want to make a motion, item number 4025. City of Monroe resolution declaring 208 East 7th Street a drug nuisance property, and for 6 months.
Yep, and then I think the last paragraph, it has a space in this resolution, one more page. If you could read the last paragraph.
Okay. Be it further resolved, the Department of Public Services is authorized to prohibit the occupancy of all portions of the property by padlocking or boarding up the property as it is deemed appropriate for a period of 6 months following the date of this resolution.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilwoman Germaini, supported by Councilman Lamore, regarding the motion. I know that the clerk has that because it's within the resolution we have. I'll always go back to the city attorney, make sure we're reading things correctly or stating our motions correctly. Mr. Buds.
Your Honor, the only thing that I would suggest is two friendly amendments are, one, that the entirety of the resolution be adopted as presented with the two additions that I'm going to describe. The first is there were blanks at lines 42 to 52 for a description of the individuals that spoke at the public hearing. and I have 3 listed. Sexton Ward spoke regarding his desires for the property. B. Manuel Robinson spoke in support of Sexton Ward regarding his desires for the property, and C. Linda Michaels spoke regarding her niece, the owner's drug use issues, spoke in support of Mr. Ward's desires regarding the property, and indicated that Jennifer is awaiting sentencing, and that Sexton was brought up with drugs in his own life are the additions that I suggest to those blanks. And then, as Councilwoman Germaini indicated, insert 6 months into the blank at line 85.
So I'll go back to the motion. I appreciate that, Mr. Buds. I'll look for the motion. You don't have to say it all. I think the clerk has it by what the city attorney, or has it prepared. But I'll take any questions that are regarding what was stated. I think what that part of the record in 42 through 52 is to include in the resolution the opportunities for the comments and what was said and the positions taken, because it becomes part of our record and the clerk's record as well. So I'm looking to the Councilwoman Germaini, who made the motion to, as Mr. Butts said, from the action to include what was stated, and you already said the 6 months, so.
I will, so I don't have to restate it. I will maintain the motion to include the comments that Mr. Buds had said to include as well.
And the support, Mr.
I will
Councilman
continue with
Moore?
the support according to what Councilperson Germaini has presented.
Thank you, Mr. Buds. Other comments from the council? Seeing none further. Clerk, please call the roll.
Moore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. I'm going to take a second here. If there's some questions you have after here this evening, I know that either city attorney or Mr. Buds, or of course Director Tolstead will help you with that. You may think, what's next? I think we kind of spelled it out what it is, but I don't know what the current arrangements are at the residence, and I think that's something probably because the action is as it's stated when it takes effect. So we need to make sure we move forward in a process that benefits all. By a resolution and adopted, it is something that does take effect, but we want to make sure that there's no sense in for additional hardships as long as it meets the time frame we're talking about. So please, if you have questions, just even a phone number that you provide to Director Tolstead or the city manager would be appreciated, so we can make sure there's calls, please. Thank you. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4023, approval of city manager employment agreement with David Robinson.
Thank you. Mr. Buds? I'm sorry, Mr. Pastu?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to have Dr. Everly introduce this item for council.
Get to the right person here. Dr. Everly, thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie Everly, Director of Human Resources, Honorable Mayor, Council, and Clerk Lavoie. As you know, once authorized to begin negotiations with David Robinson, those negotiations did start about 10 minutes after your last council meeting authorizing us to do this. That they started right away. And so what you have before you for consideration this evening is an employment agreement that does, in many aspects of the employment agreement, it looks very similar to what you have seen with other non-union employees. And it does include, of course, some of the priorities that you indicated you had established for our new city manager. A few of those highlights that I'd like to draw to your attention tonight are there's an item number 10 on the contract is communication with city council. So we have an item there. Also, communication with the community is item number 11. So there's some very strict standards that are put into place with this employment agreement. And then performance evaluation is also spelled out in this contract. Also, further back in the contract, a few other items I'd like to highlight. Number 16 and number 17 really speak to the expectation of the new city manager to be heavily involved with the International City and County Management Association as well as the MML. So certainly that's very much a priority of our council with that professional development and certification. So I wanted to highlight those for you as well, and would be happy to answer any other questions about the agreement.
I'll see if there's any questions from council for Dr. Everly. Councilman Lamore.
Dr. Everly, what did we have for his start date again?
So his start date would be June 19th. Of course, pending council's consideration of this employment agreement, Mr. Robinson would then plan to, in very short order, provide formal notice to Belleville and then make that transition.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments from council? I just have one. I thank you for putting the agreement together with some, well, sometimes you say there's standard agreements. There's also the opportunity for inclusion of information that's important to the council. And as we move forward, I just want to say I appreciate a couple items that are in here regarding what you already mentioned, items 16 and 17, which is, of course, the ICMA management. I think that's critically important because it's a network of managers and if by attending there, you learn from each other in the profession that you've all chosen and the opportunities to, I'll just say, mentor or be mentored, but also the opportunity when items come up that there's an outreach of a relationship to kind of run things past from a manager's perspective. I know Mr. Pastu has done that for many years, and I think many managers do, and Mr. Robinson may already have that. But I think putting it here in the employment agreement ensures that we're meeting what we're looking for on professional development. The second one, of course, are organizations and dues and that. It's just not the organization. I think it spells in here very well that we're looking at, active participation in these items of the alliance, business alliance here with locally, the Michigan Municipal League, IMCA. Is that the opportunities present themselves for attendance of conferences, training, and professional development. I think that's I appreciate that is in there in this agreement. So that's my comment. I don't know if there's any others. If there's no other comments or questions, then for Dr. Everly, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just like to note to council that also heavily involved in these negotiations were Attorney Buds and Mr. Jim Green, who is often involved in employee agreements and labor negotiations in the city.
The last comment will be that I really appreciate also within there that the job description of the city manager that was included for our review. And I think as we go through that's the foundation along with the agreement of how we as a council, when we set goals and objectives and we set policy with Mr. Robinson, but also it's that personal evaluation that'll come. That is in here about the time frame, and I'm sure we've all seen it, but just I'm not going to go through where it's at. I don't want to take time to spend that, but understand there was I believe 6 months or a year timeframes of things that we need to make sure we do the review. It's a new manager, but it's a new relationship, not only with council but with our community and how we carry out our policy. So I look forward to as we have that conversation to put those objectives out and known so we can work together for the future. Councilman Lamore.
Just like to make a motion, Your Honor.
Please do.
Make a motion to approve the city manager employment agreement with David Robinson and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
There's a couple supports. There's a motion by Councilman Lamore. I'll say support by Councilwoman Stillgrave on item 4023, approval of city manager employment agreement with David Robinson. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Steelgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Tremaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 3927, 2023-2024 CDBG Annual Action Plan Adoption.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, if there's any other introduction, I know we had the public hearing for comments, and There may be some additional questions from council, but I'll just ask if there's any
Nothing
further.
from administration to add.
Very good. Any, well, we can always entertain a motion, but I always like to see if there's any additional comments from the public hearing from council. Any additional comments regarding the annual action plan and adoption? Seeing none, a motion will be in order then.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion to adopt the 2023-2024 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini to, on item 3927, the 2023-2024 CDBG Annual Action Plan adoption. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Whitman?
Yes.
Steelgrave? Vining? Germaini?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Next item, please.
The next item is item 4016, approval of employment agreement with Amy Zarin.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. Administration is requesting council to approve an employment agreement with Amy Zarin to serve as the Economic Development and Authorities Coordinator position. We had a very similar position with Annette Knoll, who retired, is still helping out with the DDA, but the duties and responsibilities here are expanded to include the Telegraph Corridor Improvement Authority, Brownfield Authority, as well as the River Raisin Heritage Corridor, all working under the direction of Mr. Cochran office.
Thank you. Any questions from council regarding this employment agreement or comments to start? Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. In light of us just hiring the city manager, I really would like to have him get more acquainted with people that we hire in the future. And I did ask for the start date, June 19th. It was the start date for our new city manager. I know that's over a month and a half away, and I understand that that can put this person in a little bit of a bind in a sense, because we are thinking about offering her a position, but I'd really like to see involvement from the new city manager, since this is somebody that he's going to have under his belt for the very foreseeable future. And I'd like to wait for him to get in and get involved with that. That's my personal opinion.
Other comments?
I have a question.
Councilwoman Germaini?
So this is a full-time position, and does this replace Annette, or I guess I'm confused as to what?
Very similar to the position that she had with restructuring some duties and responsibilities, but it's clearly within the construct of the org chart that we had for the Community Development Department, earlier and even later in the meeting, with the duties of a grant dedicated position with, Caitlin. This kind of fills an economic development aspect of it. And Caitlin also handles some planning work with it to go along with Mr. Cochran, as well as the Deputy Director of Neighborhood Services. So if I might just comment on it, is that yes, people do make decisions based on anticipation of a job offer. And I'm not, I think you keep in mind, the accountable person is going to be Mr. Cochran. Ultimately, that he's going to be the one directly responsible, and I suspect that Mr. Robinson will make sure that things work and function the way they do. I have not met him. I don't get the sense that he's a micromanager, but in essence, that's really what you'd be looking at, is to having the manager delve deeper into the organization than even what I'm, have done historically. So I do have some concerns if you were to wait in that regard, and without talking with Mr. Robinson about it as well. The other thing I'm looking for is basically on the agreement is, the at-will aspect of it. It's an at-will subject to the removal by the city manager at any time, with or without cause. You hate to do that, but I think that it's certainly a consideration if the manager wants to go into looking to make some changes based on their review of the operation.
So I have some thoughts, and then I'll see if there's others from council. I think about the process of an employment agreement and the time and effort put in by the administration. I don't know who sat on the interviews exactly. I know that some were. Mr. Pastor, did you sit on these interviews?
No, I did not. I was perfectly comfortable with Mr. Cochran and Dr. Everly being a part of that interview panel.
So I would assume that going forward, it may be the same panel if there was a different process or a second process done. It wasn't. It took weeks, as I recall, from the postings to the vetting through the candidates that were there, and relying on the administration and staff, the great staff we have, of selecting a person. I do understand as a person that comes in as a manager is the responsibility with oversight, but that's going to be the manager is going to have the oversight of all the personnel here. While some may have met during the site visit and may have had conversation, I'm not sure, but maybe not all. So that's part of when you take a position in this sense, in this, you're going to have the employees that are currently there, including what was already said, it is an at-will employment. And who's responsible for the person in direct supervision. I don't think that, at least from what I've read or heard, that it's going to be an item of I think it's somewhere in one of these, I think it's in the position description or in one of these documents we read. It's about managing the people that work for you and not managing past the people that work for you that your responsibility is. I don't remember which document's in, so I could look, but I'm not going to. So you do as a manager, and we've had that here in the past 6 years, that has input of how we post jobs and how we move forward making selections. But in some, I would say Mr. Pastu would have been involved in, some not involved in it, and reliant on the staff, but I can't speak for him. If you want, I'll take the moment to try to find that. I think it's in the job description of managing in that fashion. So I'm comfortable with this agreement. And the other part of this is when I read the fact sheet, we understand that a person that currently is departing that oversaw these activities, and there's others that have had to step in to do that. I think sitting on the DDA and the Downtown Development Authority, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, knowing about the Corridor Improvement Authority, these are going to be items that if we wait until June, we'll have had 2 meetings. And it means somebody else is going to have to do those, which, because Ms. Knowles won't be here, I don't believe. So I'm comfortable with the agreement, the employment agreement that's been drafted and moving forward at this time, because there are options if things from Mr. Cochran's supervision, if they don't work. That's my opinion. Other comments? Councilwoman Stalgrave?
I just want to make the motion.
Okay, and I'll see if there's final comment.
I just wanted to say I approve the agreement.
Okay, any other comments?
Amy.
Councilman Lamore?
Yeah, were there any other people that were interviewed for this position?
Okay, I think there were several people that went through the process of selection. I don't have the numbers. I don't know how much that is, but I'll leave that to Mr. Pastu to provide information.
There are 5? Yeah, there was. Go.
You want me to speak?
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Mark Cochran again. Yes, we did interview, I think, 5 different candidates for this position. We also posted it statewide and recruited for the position. Received probably 10 to 12 different applications and resumes from across the state and narrowed it down to Ms. Arend.
Very good. Other comments? Councilwoman Stilgrave, you have a motion?
I do. Move to approve the employment agreement with Amy Zarin to serve as the Economic Development and Authorities Coordinator, and authorize the mayor, clerk treasurer, and the city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the city of Monroe.
Support.
There's a motion by Councilwoman Stilgrave, supported by Councilwoman Whitman. Item 4016, approval of the employment agreement with Amy Zarin. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore. Felger.
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Stilgrave.
Yes.
Vining.
Yes.
Germaine.
Yes.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is item 4022, consideration to approve amended employment agreement with Paula Smith as city assessor.
Oh, thank you, Your
Mr.
Honor.
Bastu, please.
City Administration is recommending council approve an amended employment agreement with Paula Smith as city assessor. She's been assessor for a little over 2 years at this point. The recommendation is that there would be reduction in benefits such as paid time off, and part of the consideration with that is a more flexible schedule related to working at home as well as in the office, and again, subject to the city's flexible work policy as approved by the city manager. With that, I think I would mention that when her husband was ailing, she did a terrific job staying on top of things while also being the primary caregiver. And if there was an employee that I had no doubt that could do this, it would be Paula, in light of what she went through here a little over a year ago. And so the one thing I also want to mention is that there is a significance related to the timing of it, that the agreement is on a 2-year agreement that would expire May 31st of 2025. That would bring to a conclusion a complete cycle of preparing the assessment roll, the tax roll, as well as the millage certifications that go with the duties and responsibilities. And in talking with Ms. Smith, she concurs that that's a logical point if there is going to be a termination with the agreement, where it would take place in the city's interest. So,
Any questions or comments regarding item 4022? Councilman Lamore.
Just like to make a motion, Your Honor. I'll make a motion to approve the amended employment agreement with Paula Smith as city assessor effective May 1st, 2023. Authorize the city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the city and authorize the assistant city manager, finance director to transfer budgeted funds in the general fund contingency to cover the cost of the payout of paid leave balances.
Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave. On item 4022, the consideration to approve amending employment agreement with Paula Smith, excuse me, as city assessor. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Stilgrave? Vining? Jermaine? Mayor Clark?
Next item, please, Mr. Oh, sorry, clerk.
The next item is 4018, consideration to approve Sawyer House lease agreement.
Mr. Bastu.
City Administration is recommending a 5-year agreement with the Sawyer Homestead for a lease beginning July 1st, 2023, and continuing through June 30th of 2028. In many ways, the proposed lease agreement is very similar to what was in place previously, with the exception of the $5,000 per month that we had in there for the lease amount. That money was used for capital maintenance related items, of which most recently we used some of it associated with the apartment. At this point in time, the city has put quite a bit of money over the last several years in there, and that really one big major project I think still remaining is doing the parking lot, which we've looked to program into our capital improvements program, if I remember, in 2025. So I know Judge Brown's in the audience as well if you have any questions, but clearly I think coming out of the pandemic, I think it's kind of a turn to get more programming and more utilization of the Sawyer House back into the community realm. So,
Your Honor,
Councilwoman Jermaine.
I'll make a motion if nobody has any comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Make a motion, consideration to approve Sawyer House lease agreement. Move to approve a 5-year lease agreement with the Sawyer Homestead effective July 1st, 2023, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Jermaine, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave. On item 4018, consideration to approve Sawyer House lease agreement. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Stilgrave? Vining? Jermaine? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4026, authorization to participate in a joint trail development planning grant with Monroe Charter Township.
Mr. Pastu.
just also, at some point, if we don't catch it in the public comment section, but clearly there is a lot more activity taking place. And this week, I know weekend we have an event going on there. I'm trying to
Founders Day.
What's that?
Founders Day.
Founders Day. And, but I think, to schedule a work session just to discuss, kind of a calendar of events, because it is ramping up the activity again now that we're outside the pandemic. So, next item was city administration is requesting council to approve a participation in a joint trail development grant with Monroe Charter Township. The study area, the grant that to be applied for would be through SEMCOG and cover La Pleasance from Bulls Harbor all the way into town, as well as Jones Avenue between La Pleasance and Monroe Avenue. So we're requesting authorization to participate. The Road Commission would be the sponsor for the grant and do the administrative work, and we're requesting contributing amount not to exceed $6,000.
Any questions for Mr. Pastu on the grant proposal? Let's make a quick comment, because this is a planning assistance grant that goes through SEMCOG. And we've had these in the past for the city. It's how some of the trails have already been developed. The planning assistance grant lays the foundation to have a concrete plan that will move forward, hopefully in the future, for a transportation alternative plan grant, also out of SEMCOG, which then you have the information at hand to know what that may cost. One of the items that's changed with SEMCOG through the Regional Review Committee is engineering costs now can be part of the plan, not the planning grant, but the TAP grant. So this sets things in place that I think from the city side, this was one of the items, one of the areas that our Trails Committee put in as one of their, I think, midterm item, and this is an opportunity to get that in that midterm after we get through this, and hopefully some additional funding grants to see how we can improve La Pleasance, not only in the city, but also Jones Avenue. So I just wanted to share those comments from about the grant. So with that, if there's any other comments, a motion on item 4026.
Motion to authorize participating in a SEMCOG joint trail development application with Monroe Charter Township, and authorize the city to contribute a not to exceed amount of $6,000 toward the local grant match.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 4026, the Trail Development Planning Grant with Monroe Charter Township. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is 4020, resolution that is regarding changes to airport operations.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have talked a little bit about the airport operations and some of the changes that administration is recommending. If you recall, with the proposed budget, we reduced the appropriation from $45,000 to the airport fund to zero, but some of this is a function of what we're proposing to do. I think in the broad sense, understanding that we have very little commercial activity out there. We no longer have a fixed-based operator. We don't have a cargo operation, nor do we have any corporate jets housed there at the airport. And so it really is functionally a recreation airport at this point in time. And to that extent, the operational changes that are proposed would reflect the fact that it is more of a recreational type of airport. And so what is proposed with this resolution is some of it is just administrative, appointing Chris Schaefer as an airport manager. Mr. Lewis will be the deputy airport manager. We would issue a notice, used to be referred to notice to airmen, that we'd be discontinuing our jet fuel sales at the airport, and that the price would be reduced to try and encourage pilots to purchase it. It provides Mr. Lewis with a discretion that once we get to the tanks low enough to pump them out, and then also to look at the environmental aspects of having the underground tanks removed. Lastly is that it's an ongoing process, but it authorizes Mr. Lewis and his staff to continue evaluating terminal operations with the intent of reducing personnel costs and still providing basic service for pilots. We're not closing the airport, but we are changing it to reflect its use over the last several years.
Any questions for Mr. Pastu? Seeing none, there's an action item. Motion would be appropriate.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution approving changes to operations at the Custer Airport.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine. Resolution to change the airport operations as stated in the resolution. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore? Yes. Felder? Yes. Whitman?
Yes.
Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
The next item is item 4019, resolution regarding refuse collection for multi-unit apartments in residential area.
Mr. Pastu.
Thank you. We've had some discussion with this, clearly with our contract with Stevens Disposal that would take effect July 1st, but also the operational change going to 96-gallon containers for the residential collection. It has, some changes to some of the multi-unit apartments that are located in residential areas that would be anywhere from a duplex to a house that may have as many as 5 or 6 units in there. And so we do see this as an opportunity to change and hopefully address some of the blight-related issues that we've dealt with, but more importantly, have the property owners pay for the cost of the service by which they receive. And so as a result of it, what we would recommend with this is each property with a multi-unit apartment in a residential neighborhood would receive one 96-gallon container at the start. The property owner located in a residential neighborhood that may contract with the with the Public Services Department for a 96-gallon. So if you've got multiple units and you need more containers, you can contact them, but there is a cost to it. And our recommended cost is $120 per year for a period beginning of July 1st each year through the following June 30th. Properties with multi-unit apartments would also be prohibited from placing any refuse bags, non-Stevens containers, or any loose bag bulk items to the curb for collection. Again, it's the responsibility of the owner/landlord to ensure their tenants comply with the regulations. Any items not contained in the 96-gallon container from a multi-apartment units in a residential neighborhood, keep making that distinction, would not be collected by the refuse hauler, and the property owner would be charged based on time, materials, and disposal costs from our Department of Public Works with a minimum charge of $75. Multi-unit apartment units would not receive any recycling bins. And as I put in there, from a comment standpoint, this would ultimately be used as another refuse container of which we would be sending contaminated recycling material and incur a surcharge associated with as contaminated levels on the recycling. So therefore, we wouldn't be doing it. And also keep in context, we don't do that for any apartment complexes either. They're going to be treated similar to what you have with apartment complexes. Also, the multi-apartment units in a residential are not eligible for bulk collection service. Again, similar to what happens with apartment complexes. They've got to take care of that on their own. And then lastly, these multi-apartment units may request yard bags, but wouldn't receive more than 50 bags in 1 year. Similar to residential units, you got 1 yard, you get 50 bag maximum. So, we think it's an opportunity to take advantage of going to the 96-gallon containers to address some of the blight problems that we've had, but also to bring in line some of the property owners, landlords that have not taken good care and attention to their tenants. And so the ordinance provides the manager with discretion. Given the massive change that's being recommended by the manager, would certainly look for the concurrence of City Council as far as an implementation for this effective July 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu. I'll see if there's any questions from council for Mr. Pastu on this item. Any comments or questions? I know we've had opportunities at work sessions and others. We've kind of worked through this at varied times. So with that, if there's not,
I'll make a motion.
Manny.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to adopt the resolution ratifying the rules and regulations established by the city manager as it pertains to the collection and billing of refuse, recycling, and yard waste services for multi-unit apartments in residential neighborhoods.
Motion by Councilwoman Germaine, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 4019, resolution regarding refuse collection for multi-unit apartments in residential area. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Felder. Whitman. Stilgrave. Vining. Germaine.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. I think we have one more item that we added.
We do. The last item does not have a number. It was added during amendments to the agenda. It's for consideration of acceptance of the Ralph Wilson Foundation grant for a kayak launch installation at Hellenberg and authorizing the city manager to sign the grant documents.
Mr. Pastu, I see Mr. Cochran's here.
So this was added late to the agenda for good reason. This was a Friday afternoon surprise at 4 o'clock that we got word from the Community Foundation of Southeast Michigan and the Ralph Wilson Foundation that we were awarded this grant. I will give kudos and props to, again, Caitlin McBriarty for filling out this application, but it was certainly a team effort working with Brad Willey, our parks supervisor, as well as Amy Mason when this opportunity became available, and we looked at different options and alternatives. And this one really floated to the top. Obviously, it's been a priority of this city council to look at more ways we can utilize the River Raisin and increase recreational opportunities on the River Raisin. And it was important to us to make sure that these opportunities that we're exploring and identifying are accessible to everybody. And so this application is for $50,000. There's no match requirement. However, the grant will purchase the equipment itself, but in the CDBG action plan that you approved earlier tonight, some of the funds for public facilities, handicap accessibility is considered a universal benefit. And so we'll use some of our CDBG funds to help construct some of the site prep work that's necessary for folks to access the kayak launch that will be purchased and installed. And so this will be at Hellenberg Park. We're still working out the exact location. Obviously something that's close to the parking lot, accessible for others, and as well as safe. So.
Very good. Thanks, Mr. Cochran. Any comments from Mr. Cochran? Councilman Felder?
Sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry. If I may just add, just to what we're asking again is just acceptance of the grant, but authorize Mr. Cochran just to reemphasize that he would be the one signing the documents, as opposed, I think when I send out an email, it would be myself. We don't want to go through changing all of the paperwork with the foundation and Ralph Wilson Foundation as well. So.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Just a brief comment. Wonderful. First of all, this is great that we are integrating some of these natural assets into our. I know that setting up boat launches is something that's been on the to-do list for some time. Does this change the timeline on our development of Mill Race Park in general?
No, actually, I think it's complementary to that. Our efforts are to make sure that there's accessible locations and access along the river. So there'll be opportunities for folks to access Mill Race once we start that park plan, looking at that park sometime after Father Carnes Park is completed later this summer. But nope, we're looking at other spots also in the city where folks can easily access the river.
But it's not changing the timeline to accommodate this project?
Nope.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Councilwoman Vining.
Your Honor, I'd like to make the motion. Move to adopt the acceptance of the grant, from Ralph Wilson grant for $50,000 for the purpose of installing a kayak launch at Hellenberg Park, and to authorize Mr. Cochran and City Manager Pastu to sign all necessary documents.
Support.
Motion by Councilwoman Viney, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave, regarding the acceptance of the Ralph Wilson Foundation grant as was stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
I have no further items.
Council comments? It's me. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Great discussion tonight regarding the authorization of our 208 or 204, whichever that is, 7th Street. I certainly hope that resolves in a good fashion. And I think we did the right thing in attempting to lay down the groundwork and hopefully get that settled and straightened out. Another question would be in regards to possibly either Mr. Cochran or Mr. Pastu in regards to the home on the 700 block of North Monroe Street, whether or not we know that they're going to demo or rebuild or what's going on with that. That's been sitting there for quite a while now.
Yeah, that's where the fire was. And
Correct.
I know that, well, I'll see what Mr. Cochran says, and, you know, if it's still an insurance item or not, we'll see.
So we have verified that the home was insured, and we've got the funds from, I believe, from the escrow or the insurance company regarding the escrow to complete the demolition if it's not completed. There's some question on whether we have enough in the escrow to actually complete the demolition of the house. It is a complete loss, and so we're continuing to seek out to work with the property owner, but the building department has been staying on top of that.
Great, thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Felder.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. First of all, congratulations to a re-up on the contract for the Sawyer Homestead, and thank you to the members of the Sawyer Homestead Board for attending this meeting. We're looking forward to Founder's Day. Also looking forward to working with City Manager Robinson as he comes on board in the next couple of weeks here. Hope everyone was able to make it out to Art in April downtown last week. I think that was fun. I saw some of the pictures online. And then there's a free community college concert May 8th at the Lazy Boy Center. And then, of course, Arbor Day. Had a chance to go to Arbor Day this week at Manor School, my son's school, my alma mater, or one of them, I guess. And was joined there with our forester, Tony Abbott, Patrick Lewis, as well, and then Jody Egan, our communications director. So I know most of the festivities were moved from outside to inside because of the weather. I know, Mr. Mayor, you got there earlier in the morning and your day precluded you from staying, but all the same, I always love making it out to Arbor Day with the Manor Bobcats. So thank you. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you. Councilwoman Whitman.
I have nothing to say, other than it's been a good night, productive, and I'm ready to go home.
We have just a few more comments, but you'll be there soon. Councilwoman Stilgrave.
All I have is next Sunday is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Councilwoman Viney.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I have a few things. So, I'm excited about the kayak launch because I know we started talking about doing that in some of our parks along the rivers years ago. Maybe even when I was on the Citizens Planning Commission. So it's good to finally see, I don't know if this is the first one, but it's good to finally see the first one actually getting ready to be installed. And, you know, last meeting, I believe it was, one of the residents from the 3rd precinct came and talked about some of the blight and things over at Hellenberg, and made what I felt were some scathing comments against the Orchard East. So, you know, I talked to him after the meeting, and I promised I would start inviting him to some of the many activities that we have in the Orchard East and show him around and let him see what a beautiful neighborhood he lives in. Because why buy a house and put all that into it and feel so bad about the neighborhood you live in? So it's my personal goal to try to change his opinion. But that led me to driving all around Hellenberg. I'm sorry, Chief, I drove on the grass and everything. Just to see the what he described as the mud hut, and it was very they use a lot of ingenuity in building, and I must say. But other than that, only thing I noticed was a couple beer cans here and there. But more so, I noticed that how abandoned the area looks, and so I just feel really good to know that it's in some of our plans, some of the city's plans, like the Heritage Park plan and the other plans that we have, the Orchard East sub-area plan that we want to develop Hellenberg. And I know it's not in our master park plan, but whatever little bit we can do to bring it back to that family friendly and sports friendly area that it once was, I'm all for it. So thank you, Mark and Caitlin and the rest of the department for working on that. Mr. Patrick, I know we talked about the stretch of World East 3rd Street between East Chester and Winchester, but the parking lane, more so on the north side, is just completely crumbled. It just looks absolutely horrible. If you hit it, you risk taking your tire off the car or breaking an axle or anything. It just looks so bad. And for all the work that we put into um, developing the Orchard East, I know we have a long way to go, but I'm a little late on this suggestion, but I know we've used community block grant funding for Winchester and other streets, or that might have been the first time we did that. But I don't know if this is like a federal road where we can't really use those funds or whatever. But I don't think a cold patch is gonna fix it. I have some pictures I'm gonna send to you when it's raining, how it looks, and when it's dry. And it's both parking lanes on both sides of that stretch are crumbled, and it's only that one block. So I don't know why it deteriorated faster than the rest of the street or whatever. But I'd like someone to take a look at that and do what we can to remediate that problem.
I see Mr. Pastor's got a comment.
It's East 3rd, between East Chester and Winchester. Yeah, it just looks really, really bad. So, I travel that road every day, so I'm noticing it. We brought up one of the employment. I think it was the new city managers, the incoming city manager's start date being June 19th, and that triggered that's Juneteenth. And they made it a federal holiday for those who don't know. And I know that the state and the county of Monroe are already observing that. I know the library, MCOP, and other agencies are also observing that holiday. And I'm not sure if it's a bargaining item that, and maybe there's no will amongst the city's employees to observe that holiday for whatever reason. But I brought this up last year when it first came, hoping that before negotiations were over, we could maybe ask about that. But if it is a bargaining item and it's up to the people, I'm not a part of the union, so I don't have a say on that. But I just think with all the racial conflicts that we've went through on this council, discussing those type of issues over the last couple years, with the Custer statue issue and other conversations about equality and they have all these words. I don't know them all. Inclusion and diversity and all these things that we say, that we strive towards. Recognizing that holiday would be a good look. Not saying it's gonna change all the conflicts or anything, but I think it will reflect well on the city. And at this point, that's only couple months away, so I don't know what we can do about it right now. But I just wanted to talk about that and bring that back into our remembrance that we hadn't discussed that any further, and now the holiday has come around again. So, and that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Germain?
Thank you, Your Honor. I am happily surprised that the railroad responded to us, so thank you. Also, tomorrow is an election, May 2nd. We have a few millage renewals on there, one of them being Lake Erie Transit renewal and educational renewals as well. So get out and vote. Everyone counts. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a few comments, some announcements, and some other things that are coming up. I'll start, of course, so that we've said already about the Sawyer Homestead. The Founders Day is Saturday, May 6th from 10 to 4 p.m., which kind of leads me to the agreement that's been extended. I look forward to working with the leadership at the Sawyer Homestead as we move forward. I think the agreement really defines the opportunities that we have to work together. I think there's opportunities to partner with our county museum and others to how we best utilize that great asset and wonderful facility that we have for the community's use. So there's some, I'll say, measures and markers in there that I think we are finally being able to get back to, and after the past few years of the transition of getting through some difficult times of the pandemic and other things, I think that we really look forward to how we can go and use the facility as part of our community and working together. Next, this week is Small Business Week, and I always think about that, and it's from a Michigan standpoint, but I think about, and that goes through Saturday, May 6th, but I always think about our small business. And we talk about Small Business Saturday. That comes up at another time around the holidays, but every day should be Small Business Day here for our communities such as Monroe and our engagement with the businesses downtown. I can tell you there's activities are increasing. More people I see, I walk through, drive through, and see that Saturdays are really starting to become very active. So, and I want to thank all those that are participants, the business owners that continue to thrive and strive to be better, the Downtown Monroe Business Network for their activities they're putting on, the Art in April that was mentioned, many other activities throughout the summer. And then, of course, and part of that is also the DDA and their role in development and some initiatives they have coming forward here in the next month that I think will help set the pace for revitalization of the remaining buildings that need some attention and rehabilitation. This several pieces of paper. Give me a second here. So I noticed that this past week, the Monroe County coming out of the Health Department, which I thought was interesting, but it's being managed through the Monroe County Drain Commissioners. This is kind of an item that goes with blight and the things people just don't know what to do with when they get tires. But Passenger Vehicle Tire Recycling Program is still active and has been for years. And I'll say the dates, but I would just simply say make contact through the county, whether it be the health department or the drain commissioner's office. But they have 4 dates. We missed the first one already from the announcement purposes, but May 31st, June 28th, and July 26th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can drop off up to 10 tires by participant, and of course until I'll say the container is full, and it's pretty large. But this is through funding both from Eagle and the County of Monroe. So here's funding put together to make our community so it's not just people rolling tires off into the grass or the park or the ditch. And so there's a way to recycle those. So I hope everybody takes the opportunity. I know you probably won't remember the dates that I've just given you, but please look forward to that. If you have tires, just plan for that day. The first one that's coming up is May 31st, and you can find further from there. Staying in line with some historical discussions, the County Museum Historical Marker Program is going to continue. They've identified 5 markers they're going to be refurbishing through that contract, thanks to the residents and their support of that funding that came to the museum and through the county to be able to do this refurbishment of historical markers, 3 of which of these 5 are in the city of Monroe. So if I told you where they were and where they are, then you won't go look for them. So, but I will anyways. The Old Michigan Southern, if you don't know where it is, it's in Gateway Park. The editor Ellis, which is right on Front Street, of course, related to the newspaper, and the Monroe Soldiers, which is also on West First Street. So you can take a look at those and then see why they're going to be on the list, as well as the other ones that were on this as well. There's the Johnson Finney House has one as well. So the historical marker program, which gets me to the last point I have to make, which was on our consent agenda this evening. I want to thank council for the support. The sisters at IHM on the consent agenda, they are also going to be seeking a state historical marker as they start to do their research and history about where their original, I'll say, log cabin was, or where they first settled. And it's in the area of St. Mary's. But they're going to do that diligence. They were looking for letters of support, which of course council with the action this evening did. So it's down the road. It's a while. We know that we're having our plans for the Martin Luther King Bridge and that refurbishment. That's really part of that whole vision. How do we place the things correctly where they should be? And yet, as we look at the parking lot there at St. Mary's, I think, and the council has put forward funding commitments to and some work of how we repurpose that into a much more accommodating and aesthetically appealing location. And that ties to the Martin Luther King Bridge as well, which continues to move forward. So I think those are my comments for this evening. And Arbor Day was already mentioned, so yeah, I know that Clerk LaVoy and I got there early, but I was glad the proclamation from the council was delivered. The hope was that they were going to read it or at least share it with the students throughout the day. That was what we kind of asked. So the idea was each classroom could have it so they could kind of get close up with that. And I know the tree talks that Councilman Felder was present at as well. So it's good interaction, of course. Arbor Day is founded from people from the city of Monroe, so. Clerk LaVoy, your comments, please.
Yes, just a couple brief comments. As Councilperson Germaini mentioned, tomorrow is Election Day in the city of Monroe and in a few other locations in the county. So if you don't live in the city, you might want to check with your township to see if you have an election. That means in about 7 hours, I will be back here. The clerk's office staff has worked really hard to make sure everything's in place. We will have all of our precincts open, so go vote where you normally vote. And if you have your absentee ballot, please get that back to us. And it just has to be here at City Hall by 8 o'clock. If I have it in my hands at 8 o'clock, we can take it to the counting board. If I have it in my hands at 8:01, we cannot take it to the counting board. So right at 8 o'clock is the hard deadline. And while I was sitting here, there were a couple of alerts. The legislature and the governor have made an agreement on the expansion of voting rights for military and overseas voters, and that was passed in November when Proposition 22-2 was passed. However, they finally got the language together and passed the law, and it's going to be implemented tomorrow. So I got to go home and figure that out. And then apparently we may have some challengers at the precinct. So I've been saying this a lot lately. No election is a small election. We prepare for them exactly the way we do any other election, and it's all very fluid. So we're on top of it, and we will have safe, efficient, fair, and honest elections tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing everyone there. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to make a last comment to that because, over the years here with Clerk LaVoy, we're looking at how we accommodated the elections. Much has changed in the process and keeping up with that. But with something as simple as kind of the initiative of this here at City Hall with the spaces that are available for those to come to the clerk's office, for those that can park, go in, come back out quickly, and it continues to rotate through, plus the drop box. So I just want to say thanks for all that. And I think, some still like to walk it in the door, which is great, and go right to the counter, but it also makes it accommodating. They know they can park there and not trying to figure they have to walk further than they need to. So those small items are very accommodating for the public, so I appreciate that. Mr. Pastu?
Nothing for tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. So at this time, we have citizens' comments, and we'll take comments from those present here this evening. As I always say, just mindful of the rules of the chambers, that please state your name, your residence of jurisdiction would be appreciated, and 3 minutes. And that's it. So at this time, are there any public comments? Yes, Judge Brown, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to see you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael Brown, Raisinville Township. I want to thank the mayor and the city council for passing the lease agreement today. The prior lease agreement, I think, worked well for everyone, and I think this will be a great partnership going forward. I particularly want to thank Mr. Pastu. It's been a pleasure to work with you the last 7 years about the Sawyer homestead. I'm going to miss working with you, but I know you have a well-deserved retirement ahead.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Other comments from those present here this evening? Public comments? Yes, sir.
Elliot James, 633 Stone Street. You took the air out of my cell when you talked about Arbor Day. I wanted to say I saw where they was passing out trees in Ann Arbor, and I wonder if we can do something like that for our Orchard East, Orchard East. And also about the Martin Luther King Bridge, I wanted to make sure that it was still being worked on, the idea of getting it together.
It's still moving forward in design. We're still on track. I'm thinking, this fall? You got another meeting tomorrow? Okay, yeah, this fall, I think we should have it ready for design to go forward.
Okay, that's all I need. Like, you took the air right out of my cell.
Thank you, sir. You know, I'll just make a follow-up comment because about trees of, we've had councils put together the trees committee, and they've had their first meeting. So the residents that are participating in that, as always say, boards of commissions are important in any community, and it takes the work and support of the volunteers of the community to serve on those to get help council within policy in those discussions. But they have some tasks at hand on trees, and I know that Mr. Pastu and I, and actually Mr. Lewis, have chatted about. I seem to recall when there was trees that were being out by Munson, out by near the airport, that were being planted. Is that still an option in the future? I'm not sure it is, but we'll see, because how do we get them in place quickly? But I'd leave that to the trees committee to figure out. Other comments from those present here this evening? Any comments? Seeing no comments.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Yes. Whitman? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Germaini?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you all for being here.
Good grief. A long meeting.